I don't need to do many of the things that you have to do in order to take the money that you give to a bank that is legally theirs and send it somewhere else. And that is a very, very different beast. This type of money that you own, that you can send to anyone else, means that it creates all sorts of interesting political challenges. Because it's censorship resistance. It doesn't care what you're using that money for. It doesn't care who you're sending it to. It doesn't care what your race is, what your color is, what your sexual preference is. But money that you give to a bank does care. It's just like digital cash at that point. And this peer-to-peer payment system has become more and more useful, which is why we're seeing this more and more attention to this asset class. So just to summarize those two things, firstly, with banks, the bank is the legal owner of that money. If you want an example of what happens when banks take their legal entitlement to the money that you thought was yours, ask the people in Cyprus what happened in 2013. And this can happen. Laws are being changed all around the world to make it easier and more clear for banks to exercise that legal entitlement to your money in case there's any kind of systemic risk event in the system, like we saw in 2008. The second thing is that you can spend it as you wish. With banking, you have to get the bank's permission and spend it in a way that's in line with how they want, the government want, in order to spend it. Now, the third property we've touched upon, and this is why people are interested in Bitcoin today more than ever. It's the monetary policy. Already Marco in his first talk talked about the monetary policy of Bitcoin. And I'd like to summarize it in very simple terms. This took a while for me to understand, but it was what really got me interested in Bitcoin. So the monetary policy of your traditional money, very few people understand and don't ask about, because they have this thing in their pocket which they trust other people will accept for payment. And so they don't ask many questions until the financial system or some kind of risk happens to their deposits or in the bank at the moment. But the monetary policy is that governments do not create or print very much money at all. Most people criticize governments for printing too much cash and inflating away money. Governments don't do much of that at all. In fact, in most economies, it's only about 3% of the money in the entire system, in many economies. Other economies rely on cash more, but the government only creates cash, or an institution from the government, depending on how your central bank is set up. They control interest rates to indirectly try and help people, the banks, determine how much money they create. But if you have digital online banking and you log into your online banking, if you have a positive balance in your bank, that was created by the private banking sector. Governments gave banks the ability to create money when they issued banking licenses. And the inventors of digital currency was not Satoshi Nakamoto. The inventors of digital currency were banks, because they created a digital representation of the money that the governments were creating. And they were given a license in order to do that. And the way that they do that, the mechanism by which they create the digital currency, which is a digital representation of the cash that your government or central bank prints, is that they were simultaneously allowed to create an asset and a liability every time they issue a loan. So if you go to a bank and you borrow some money from them, that money is not somebody else's money that they're relocating to you, as we're taught in many economics textbooks. It's actually money that's created into existence as a digital currency in the value, in the same denomination as the currency that the government creates at point of issuing that loan. And so the problem with that is that you create further systemic risk in the system. Because in order for money, digital money, or this digital currency to exist, somebody has to borrow it. So if you log into your online banking and you have a positive balance, it means that somebody else has a negative balance, and it's always matched up. Every digital deposit that exists is matched by somebody else that goes into debt.